Zepbound 5 milligrams. How to have appetite suppression while being in a calorie deficit to lose weight. Hi, beautiful friends. I'm Elizabeth, Countess of Shopping, and on today's episode, I'm really excited to talk about weight loss with Zepbound, whether you're on Zepbound 5 milligrams or at a higher dose. We're going to talk about all of it. I have lost over 106 pounds, which is crazy, the last 2+ years. It's actually 26 months of being on Mounjaro, Zepbound, Tirzepatide. And the reason for those is because of the Mounjaro shortage is why I've switched over a whole bunch. So we're going to deep dive in. Number one, being in a calorie deficit, we got to know what our calories are, right, per day. And if you have just started Zepbound 2.5 milligrams, Zepbound 5 milligrams, if you are not able to process what I'm saying in terms of like calories and things like that, you're like, I'm just trying to handle my diarrhea. Then save this video for future reference. Still watch it, but save it to come back to too when it is applicable, when you're like, okay, I can move beyond just the appetite suppression and I'm really working on lifestyle changes, sustainable lifestyle habits. That for me is my whole focus over the last, being morbidly obese, now to doing really, really cool stuff like lifting weights and things like that. How do I go from being morbidly obese to this is through appetite suppression with Zepbound. And through that was through a calorie deficit. Like all roads lead back into that. And so I have a free calorie like counter, a calculator. It will tell you how many calories per day you should be eating. Now, there's 3 different types of calorie calculators. Mine's totally free. You don't have to pay for it. It's on countessofshopping.com. It's linked in the description, my gift to you for being part of the Countess of Shopping community here. Feel free to share it with whomever. It's linked down in the description. Click the ... more button to get a direct link to it, or you can just go on countessofshopping.com and then like type search in over. There's a ton of articles there that are related back to GLP-1s and GLP-1 weight loss. So that free calorie calculator will tell you now there's 3 different kinds across the board of calorie calculators. I picked one that made the most sense for me. So if those calories don't make sense for you, I always want to punch you to your healthcare provider, to a dietitian. I am none of those. And being fully upfront and honest, this is simply my experience, strength, and hope of having taken over 100 Mounjaro, Zepbound, and Tirzepatide compound shots over the last 2+ years. My experience, strength, and hope is I got to be in a calorie deficit. To be in a calorie deficit, I got to know how many calories. Like we can't shoot an arrow without knowing what we're aiming for. And so with the calorie calculator, hopefully that will help you figure out, okay, what makes the best sense for me per day. And if on day, for me, the most maximum appetite suppression from my Zepbound injection, or if you're on Mounjaro or Tirzepatide, is 24 to 48 hours. That's peak. And so I've done a whole video on like a surfer, riding that wave of the appetite suppression with it. But knowing in there when you're riding that wave of appetite suppression, day 5, day 6, day 7, for me, but probably for you too, have less appetite suppression. So these are more applicable for day 5, day 6, day 7 versus day 1, day 2, and day 3, if that makes sense. Because we know the half-life dose for Zepbound is day 5. So that is going to change in terms of the half-life dose, how we're feeling in terms of appetite suppression. And I should use my I statements, how I'm feeling in terms of my appetite suppression with that. So tip number one, I've got 7 tips for you. Number 1 is get the free calorie calculator because you can't shoot an arrow without knowing where you're going to aim for. I'm going to horse camp here in a couple weeks. And one of the things I can do is archery. So I'm like really getting into like aiming for a target and shooting for it. That's what we're doing here for our daily calorie tracker. Or if you want to track your calories over the course of a week for your appetite suppression to really give a good gauge of like, okay, I am not hungry at all. And if this is your camp, I'm not hungry at all. I wish I was in that camp still. I'm not in that camp anymore. That has changed a lot for me that I'm not in that camp anymore. I am, you're not hungry at all. And maybe you're massively under eating. And that can lead to a lot of issues, which I just talked about in yesterday's live. So I'm not going to deep dive into that on today's video. But under eating calories for a significant period of time can be problematic. But throughout the week, trust and believe I'm using that as a tool in my tool belt for the appetite suppression. Number 2, for me, with eating an increased amount of protein has dramatically helped my appetite suppression. Dramatically. At one point, and I was not tracking. And if the thought of tracking, I'm going to have a follow-up video on this because you guys have asked me so much. In yesterday's live, you guys asked me over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, I got to do a whole video on this. If it triggers you and you get this visceral reaction when I say calorie tracking, stay tuned. This is not diet culture. Lord knows I'm like, want to be the furthest away from that. I want healthy, sustainable, encouraging, long lasting tips with using my GLP-1 medication. But I have to, for my experience, strength, and hope. And y'all, I'm still working through this. Like, I'm still not at my goal weight yet. I still, I know I show these people are like, you look amazing. I'm like, thank you so much. I feel like I do. But my body is still about 20 pounds off from my BMI weight of where I should be. We know that BMI is slightly skewed. Also, probably a lot of that is probably, maybe 7 to 10 pounds, maybe a little bit more is loose skin. So still realistically, if you take that off, it's like a little bit more than 10 pounds away from my goal weight. So I'm not as hungry when I focus in on protein. And you're like, okay, I don't like protein. Been there, done that, have the t-shirt. I'm like, I hate chicken before. Now I actually really like chicken, but that was for me, this adversity because I was on diets of where I was force-fed chicken. And so I was like, at exit stage left for my Zepbound weight loss, I shan't be doing that. But now I actually really like it because it's a lean protein and it doesn't affect my stomach with the Zepbound side effects, diarrhea, constipation, nausea, vomiting. So number 2, figuring out your protein also is an important piece of this. For me, I was probably realistically eating about 50 grams of protein per day, started tracking, started making changes. This was a slow evolution. If you are a turtle, it's okay to be slow. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And so for me, I felt, I don't know what I'm doing with my protein. It took me a long time just to figure out, okay, when do I stop eating? Like just getting that and understanding that. So if that's where you're at with your Zepbound journey, that's totally okay. I want to validate you because I've been there of like, I can't do these advanced things. And so for me, this, and for some of you, they're like, this is not advanced at all. I'm like, for me it is. But number 2, not being hungry with the increased protein. Number 3, constipation. I feel like we need like a rap, like constipation. That's one of the things with Zepbound weight loss and Zepbound in general. They tell us in the literature, Eli Lilly, the manufacturer of Zepbound, tells us in the literature that we're going to have probably, because it's the most common side effects, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and constipation. And so if you have constipation, that is going to affect the scale. And so I want to talk about with the scale using different methods of tracking with that. But for me, the most helpful thing for constipation for me was when I first bought Bioptimizers. Bioptimizers Magnesium Breakthrough. Bioptimizers Magnesium Breakthrough has seven types of constipation with 7 types of magnesium with it, not constipation with it. 7 types of magnesium with it. That's the size of the pill. They're not crazy big pill size in terms of, those are strawberries, by the way, on my nails. People are like, what are those? Strawberries. They're not, you can see relative to my head, they're not big pills. If you don't like pills, they do have a powdered format too. I love the pills because I can brush my teeth, pop my mouth guard in, and I'll take 2 or 3 of these per night. Y'all, I don't have constipation and have not had constipation issues because I take Magnesium Breakthrough. It has been a game changer, but because there's 7 types of magnesium in it, it has in there things that are helping with muscle recovery, sleep, Zepbound fatigue because it's helping my sleep, my anxiety. But when I'm lifting too, which maybe that's next in your journey, know that it's helped my muscles so much. Even just walking, it's helped with like muscle recovery of that. Use the discount code QUEEN, QUEEN. It's linked in the description link below to get a discount on your order. I love ordering directly from vendors because I negotiate these discounts for you. So take advantage of that discount that I've negotiated hard for you guys. But this is what I bought and I've used it now for a long, long time on my Zepbound journey because that constipation, and again, this sounds so like we're besties, so I'm going to be kind of crass, but I wake up and I go to the bathroom. It's not like I don't have constipate, like it's deliciously fabulous. If poop can be deliciously fabulous, oh my God, that's so weird. But the effects of the scale from constipation are real. And for me, that did mind loops for me when I had constipation. I'm like, it would mess with the scale, and I'm a daily wearer. I'm a daily wearer to hold myself accountable, but also to see trends and also to learn how different foods react for my body. That's one of the reasons. I've gone away from daily weighing, but I actually really like it for the loving accountability. If that's not you, then don't do it. Then don't weigh daily. But for me, the constipation definitely messed with the scale. So I can use photos to also as a unit of metrics for my weight loss. Number 2 is clothes. I'm in right now. I can't believe it. I'm like, who is this person? A size medium dress right now. I got Draper James it's, who's that? Reese Witherspoon. That's her company. It's a dress. Someone recommended. They're like, a stylist, one of my stylists is like, you get this dress. So I bought it and I'm like, oh my God, it's a medium and it fits. It like makes my waist look so snatched. I'm like, okay. So clothes. Number 3, so we said clothes, photos. Number 3 is tape measure. I'll link this down on my Amazon shopping list. I got an updated one. If you have the old one I used to recommend, don't buy anything. This one is just as good as the old one. However, it makes the tie, like you see how it stops like that? It makes it much easier to go through and do my measurements because it's like, it's just a little bit easier to do the measurements with. If you want a little bit easier, this is a great one to have. Highly recommend. It syncs into the app, which also syncs to my scale. So all the data is synced together. And so those are 3 different types of unit of measurement, particularly with constipation, that if the scale is not budging, and if that's our ultimate goal on Zepbound weight loss, is to lose weight through appetite suppression, through the calorie deficit, those are helpful units of measurement with it too. Tip number 4 for appetite suppression that goes along with calorie deficit. Again, this is not diet culture talking. It's literally to help with appetite suppression of having water. I realized after working out more that, oh, I just dropped that, that I wasn't drinking enough water. In terms of I sweat a bunch working out now, I'm thirsty. And my body's gonna tell me I'm thirsty. But where my brain tricks in that is I have confused thirst with hunger. And so therefore with the appetite suppression, it's not like diet culture, it's literally being morbidly obese. I used to think being thirsty was me being hungry and confusing those 2 bodily signals. And so having discernment now and learning like, oh, I'm just thirsty. So I have these cute 40-ounce tumblers. You do whatever you want in terms of your drinking. But for me, for my water, I get so excited picking up my tumbler of the day, my nugget ice. It is a whole like dating. Like it's just fun. Making drinking water fun. But the root of that for the appetite suppression was discerning between real head hunger and physical hunger. And I was confusing thirst with bodily hunger. So it's not really head hunger. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about head hunger, I have a whole video on my playlist. Make sure you click that subscribe button so you can go see it. But confusing being thirsty with that for sure has been a learning process for me. Again, there's all these like small little building blocks of smashing being morbidly obese that I didn't even recognize when I first started. So again, if you are just starting Zepbound 2.5 milligrams, Zepbound 5 milligrams, or maybe you've been on the medication for quite some time, for me, it is still a daily learning lesson for moving in this healthy body. Number 5, food triggers hunger. So certain foods, I saw this recently on, and I wish I could give the credit, it was a personal trainer and I forget what his name is. I actually had interviewed him on my show a couple years back. I follow him on Instagram and I share his stuff. So if you follow me on Instagram, it's in my Instagram stories. Talking about food can trigger hunger. He had given the example, and I thought this was so good, about some kind of chip. And I'm like, oh my God, it wasn't I hadn't eaten the chips that he was referencing, but like pop chips for me can trigger me not feeling full. So for certain foods for you, do not feel full after eating them. Once I saw that video from this personal trainer, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, there's actually several foods that I eat that I don't feel full after eating them, that they actually make me hungrier. And there's this whole video that this personal trainer had done about how these, like, they're equivalent to, they're some kind of chip, how they made him hungrier after eating them. Not only did it not make him full, it actually made him even hungrier. And he had noticed this, and I was like, oh my gosh, what an insight. And so I wanted to share that with you, and maybe you can start noticing this. Certain foods after you eat them, do you feel really full? And certain foods after eating them, are you hungrier? Can certain foods be triggering for you on that, of where it makes you go more into eating as opposed to pausing and being like, okay, my body's full. Like my body's giving me those signals that I'm full. And that leads into number 6, which is what feels full. For me, starting to notice foods that make me feel full. I was talking to a friend yesterday. We voice memo pretty much every day, one of my besties, on Instagram, and I'm voice memoing back and forth, back and forth. And I was like, for me, steak. Steak is one of those. Now, I can't have, because of the 4 major, not major, but most common side effects are diarrhea, nausea, constipation, vomiting with Zepbound and Mounjaro and Tirzepatide compound. And Wegovy too, if we're throwing that in semaglutide. So what feels full for me is steak, but I can't have fatty steak like a ribeye. I have to have like more of a lean steak. But after eating that, I do feel full. Or a lean hamburger or lean turkey, I feel full with that. That makes me feel, and I know for some of you, you don't eat meat, so this is not applicable for some, but for me, very much. When I have chicken, it's not that full feeling. When I have fish, I definitely have to eat more fish to get that same full feeling with a steak, like a lean steak. Just observations, not just because that's diminishing words, but an observation I've made with food relative to what I'm consuming. So for you, do you have certain foods that you know that just make you feel full after you eat them? And certain feels where you feel hungrier after eating them. And so leaning into those foods and putting more of those into your meal plan or your food choices throughout the week for your Zepbound lunches or your Zepbound dinners. Feeling full. Now, part of this, I get slammed a bunch on the internet for this, so I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Yes, of course, because I feel like it's common sense with this, but also on my morbid obesity journey, some things for me have not been common sense. So I just want to make sure I'm saying it, that we are supposed to feel hunger. Zepbound is not eliminating completely the feeling of hunger. So having appetite suppression 24/7 is a skewed view of thinking. I have thought that before and been like, gosh, that would be really nice. But that is not realistic, nor is that healthy, nor is that sustainable, and nor is that a long-term solution, which at the end of the day, I am here, honey, loud and proud to be in a long-term sustainable lifestyle with using GLP-1 medication to help with my GLP-1 deficiency. And so therefore, I want to encourage you, we're going to feel hunger. We're going to. Eliminating that completely is not the goal for me. So I'm perfectly clear on that for people who later on come back as keyboard warriors. Oh, no, feeling that hunger is actually a beautiful thing. I'm learning to embrace it more because before the goal for me when I was morbidly obese was like, I hated feeling hungry because I had no ability to stop. Beautiful news is Zepbound has given me the stop button. I now know what stop, putting my fork down and being like, I do actually have control. Like there's self-control over food. Whereas before GLP-1, and before Zepbound, I had no off. If I went to the kitchen, it was not one plate of food, it was three, and I'd go back for a second helping, third helping on big plates. Now it's one little plate, and I feel really, really comfortable with that if I'm having the right food choices with that. And that goes in conjunction of what feels full. You know what doesn't feel full for me after eating sometimes? Vegetables. Literally, yesterday I was like, ugh, I need to have fiber. I need to have fiber. Going back to that Optimizers, my Bioptimizers magnesium breakthrough that helps with I don't have constipation issue. It's because I get enough fiber in. If you're eating a ton of protein, you know what happens? Your poops become bricks. From my personal experience. Magnesium breakthrough is amazing because I'm also having fiber through fruits and vegetables. For me, eating vegetables does not make me feel completely full, but the volume of having like a salad, or yesterday I had pickles, but they didn't have like a sugar in there. They were healthful pickles. Also carrots for me. So I've been on a carrot chips, like cut into little circle coins recently. Like there's certain vegetables where I just get excited about them. I'm like, okay, but I'm eating those with the intention of fiber and nutrients and also the volume of it. Having a salad is not going to make me physically full. It's the protein and the carbs with it too. Do I have a baked potato occasionally? Yes, I do. Was I the countess of low carb? Yes, I was. Yes, I was. And so for me, incorporating some carbs back, and I like eating a high protein lifestyle and I like having more low carbs just for my blood sugars. But do I have those sometimes? I do. Mashed sweet potatoes. I had them with my territory meal delivery a couple days ago. It was so filling. It was so good. It felt decadent. And I just had a little bit. It wasn't a lot, but a little bit. So the point for number 6 is what feels full. For me, I notice with my protein. And I want to encourage you over the next week, your challenge is noticing which proteins make you feel fuller. What's like the king of your proteins, and then like what's your fish? For me, the fish, I love fish. Don't get it twisted. I love fish. But I do not feel full after. I feel full for a little bit, but I have to eat copious amounts of fish to get that same steak feeling when I can just have a steak and I'm like, full. So, which is why we've leaned into a little bit of like stews and soups, like beef soup and stews, like an Irish stew has been really helpful. So, but that took trial and error. And so I want to encourage you, your trial and error. Number 7 of how to have appetite suppression while being in a calorie deficit is noticing my hormones. When I go to my calendar, sometimes my hormones are different, like probably for you. As they say in fried green tomatoes, them hormones, honey. My hormones, before I have my cycle, I am eating a lot of food and I am not necessarily in a calorie deficit and I'm not having appetite suppression. And I used to feel guilt, shame, condemnation for that until I look at the calendar and be like, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's my body being its body. It's my hormones kicking in because I'm ready to start my cycle. And I'm not going to have as much appetite suppression during that particular week on my calendar. So it's very helpful for your calendar to know, like, that has nothing really to do with me. That's just the way my body's going, and recognizing that. Now, if this is week after day, week after week after week, that's different. That's different. But for me, noticing, okay, there's a couple days of where I frequently have to remind myself of when I go through these pockets, I'm like, oh, I feel like a failure. And it's like, no, I'm not a failure at all. That's the way my body's made. It's having going through these hormonal changes. And so noticing that, because I know many people in my audience are perimenopausal or menopausal, and knowing that can also change that too, which is why it's so helpful to have your own Avengers team. I call it an Avengers team of different people helping to assist you, whether they're on your payroll and you're paying them, or whether doing research here on YouTube or other free, at the library, things like that. Whatever I want to make sure there's socioeconomic options available for all. So keeping in mind, if you can't afford to hire a dietitian, great, go to the library. Libraries are a beautiful thing. And that can be an option for you too, or getting books on tape or whatever. I just said books on tape. I'm dating myself. Books on earbuds. What's it called? Books on your phone that you can listen to. Oh my God, I sound so old. You know what I'm saying. Hopefully you know it. If you've made it this far in the video, you know what I'm saying. So appetite suppression, I hope that helps kickstart, particularly if you're just starting your journey. Hopefully now recognizing, okay, Elizabeth says, and I got to track for myself, and on countessofshopping.com, I have a side effects tracker, so get that too. It's free. But Elizabeth says that she feels peak appetite suppression 24 to 48 hours into her Zepbound week. I'm going to lean into that until I have my own data. So if you don't have that data, that's also one of your tasks this week, is to start tracking and figuring that out. For me, it's 24 to 48 hours. Elizabeth also said that day 5 is half-life dose. So for her, she is more hungry. There's less appetite suppression on day 5, day 6, day 7. And that's natural because that is half-life dose starts on day 5. So it's naturally going to go down in terms of hunger. Or it's going to go down in terms of appetite suppression. Hunger is going to go up. So keeping that in mind, that is the rhythm, that is the cycle, that is the way that the week goes. Now, when I throw in things like stress, or not sleeping, or hormones, or these other things getting thrown in, that's also going to change it up a little bit. Now, when you increase dose, that also changes it too. So just recognize, like, all these things in your stew. Speaking of stew, now I'm like, I really want stew for lunch. All of those things in your mixing bowl here play a factor in it as well. And just because you don't have appetite suppression, maybe you just need a higher dose on that of where you will feel it. My friend and I are talking about that too. One of my dear, dear friends just started semaglutide. We're talking about appetite suppression. I'm like, they're on the beginning dose. I'm like, that's a loading dose. You may not feel that. On Zepbound 5 milligrams, you may not feel the appetite suppression. It may just take a higher dose for your body. And that's why I want to encourage you. Comparison is the thief of joy. Do not compare yourself to anyone on the GLP-1 diet, particularly me. Like, trust and believe. If you knew the whole back end things, you may not want to trade shoes with me, except my Louboutins, because those are fabulous. But I digress. It's like, I don't have my Louboutins on. You know what I have on right now? My favorite walking shoes, because I'm going to go walking after this. So I've got this pretty dress on, and I also have my walking shoes on. Yes, I do. I'm going to take this dress off afterwards and go for a nice 2-mile walk, because I only have in 1,200 steps, and I got to get a step in and get my steps in for the day. I hope that those have helped you for your appetite suppression while being in a calorie deficit, while recognizing some of these factors. I'm sure that there is a nugget that you pulled from this video, and what is where we have learned is actually implementing things. It's one thing to think about them, but it's a whole horse of a different color to actually implement them. So I want to know, what are you doing today to move you closer to your goals? If you're just talking about it or thinking about it, that's not actually doing it. Get into the doing of something of it. So what of these 7 makes the most sense for you? I would love to know in the comments down below. And what are you doing today to move you closer to your goal? That's always my question. I would love to know that too in the comments below. Number 3, I do an emoji of the day, because emojis of the day help me to get to know you better because I care. It helps me to see your name over and over with a pattern recognition. Truly, that's how I know people that show up on our, YouTube has created this list. It's called Community Spotlight. And so I love it because then I get to see our Community Spotlight folks are Amy, Marjorie, Mary Beth, Carmel Queen, I love the name, and Holly. Those are our Community Spotlight weeks, Spotlight members of the week. YouTube picks those, I don't, but there's thousands of you that are also on the community spotlight too, but that means that they're interacting, like they're interacting the most, which is one of the things. So our emoji of the day today. I always have 10 million of these until I sit in this chair and then I forget. Literally, as I walked in, I had an emoji of the day all planned out, and they're usually fun and they make me laugh. And now I'm like, what was the emoji of the day today? Oh, it was lip gloss. Many of you guys were asking about my Instagram video about my lip gloss. It's the new L'Oreal one. I'll link it down below. I'm kind of obsessed. So today's, it's a lip plumper. It's nice. Today's emoji of the day is lip gloss, like a lipstick. And that helps me to know you better because I truly do care. So it tingles, by the way. It's a lip plumper, so it's going to be a little bit tingly, a little bit spicy on there in terms of like, it plumps a little bit. Not crazy, but I like the color. It's a spring color. I digress. And make sure you go into get your order of Bioptimizers Magnesium Breakthrough. Use the discount code QUEEN. Game changer, 7 types of magnesium. Has helped me so much constipation, muscle recovery, fatigue, sleep along that vein, and anxiety. And that will be linked in the description link below, and get your free calorie counter too. My sweet friends, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. I'm Countess of Shopping. Count my blessings because life is delicious. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, my loves. Have a great day.